How's it going, everyone? G-Smith624 here, and today we are here with some more Overwatch talk. That's what I'm calling these little bits, at least until I can think of a better name. But in today's Overwatch talk, our talk is about Sombra, and is she viable in the Season 3 comp? Because a lot of people are saying if you pick Sombra, it's an instant lose for your team. And I want to show you guys, so to speak, that Sombra is a viable option if you play her correctly. And what I mean by that is you don't play Sombra like Blizzard designed her. And what I mean by that is Blizzard said, or has stated, Sombra is an offensive unit. I do not agree with this in the slightest. I personally believe Sombra is not offensive, because if she goes to try and get picks by herself, she'll almost always get punished. So I personally believe if you want to do good with Sombra in competitive or just in general, you don't play her as an offensive hero. You play her as a defensive hero. And that means on capture points like this, you are hacking the enemy objective, making sure they cannot get it. You are firing at the Pharahs in the air if there's a Pharah, because although Sombra's radius is much larger, with how many bullets she is constantly firing, her SMG can actually take out a Pharah in the air fairly easily. And another thing with Sombra's kit is her ultimate is not for not an offensive ultimate. It is great for holding a point, or I mean, it can be used to push, but it's more so used if an enemy is making a push on you, so that way you can ult them, prevent them from using their ults that they were about to pop in order to get into the point. So Sombra is not an offensive hero if you are going to play her in comp. The best way to play her is to play her on defense, making sure the enemy team can't get on the point. Because with your teleporter and your invisibility, you'll be able to glide around the point, holding it for a lot of time compared to other heroes. The only other heroes that really can do it as well are Genji and Lucio, who can just fly around the point with ease while staying in the objective. And even then, Lucio has a hard time, and so does Genji. But with Sombra, you can literally have a teleporter placed in one corner of the place. Make yourself go invisible, just run around the team, enemy team in circles. If you get hit, go to your teleporter, and you can just hold on to that objective. Plus, you still can get picks with Sombra, but she is so good at holding those key choke points on the maps. Like, on the map playing in the background here, I can't think of the name of the map, I apologize. You see me on multiple occasions, I'll pop my EMP right at the enemy spawn choke point coming into the objective area, and that is because that makes it so the enemy team cannot get the objective, because they have to back up and wait for my ult to wear off of them. That is also why Sombra is so good at being a defensive hero, because it makes it that much harder for the enemy offensive heroes to get close with their ultimates, because half of their ults will immediately get cancelled. Pharah's ult, if she gets hacked midway through, it will just stop. Reaper's ult, it will just stop. That's why I feel personally Sombra is more a defensive hero, because if you can get the hack off on either of them, it will just immediately end them. It will just stop them from using their abilities, and on top of that, it will stop them from being able to you finish off their ult. It will fully drain their ult meter, and it will also, on top of that, make it so if you're Pharah, you can no longer use your boost to get really high in the air, or Wraith away as Reaper, making it that much harder to get to the choke point, or get away from the battle unscathed. And on top of that, also, Sombra's ult is good for the other heroes that have started to rise into new positions in the meta. For example, if you look at Zarya and Lucio, for the longest time, has been #1 healer choice because he's just that good. He gives all-around heals, he has the drop the beat, and there's just no really way to punish him. Well, now, if the enemy team tries to push with a drop the beat, if you're playing a defensive Sombra and you have your ult, they drop the beat, then you immediately release your EMP, their drop the beat is gone, and they don't have access to their abilities. And if you're playing a Zarya and you're trying to get your barriers charged, you get hacked, you can't use your barriers. Or if you get hit with an EMP, your shields are gone, which would also affect Symmetra and Zenyatta, making them less viable options if an enemy team has a Sombra. Making it so you are kind of forcing their hand to play heroes that don't have shields, so making them switch to their tank around. If you can get the hacks off, or with your EMP, constantly hitting them with their EMP, you will force them into a situation where they can't use the heroes they want to use because you'll be constantly stopping them with your ult. And Sombra has possibly one of the fastest ults in the game, because every bullet she lands on an enemy that hits, like not a shield, but just hits in general, will charge 1%. And now you may be thinking, oh, that's not that much. Well, think about it this way. Sombra's gun has 60 shots in every clip. You hit 30 of those, you hit half. You hit half, and not a Reinhardt shield, not a Diva ult, not anything like that, not a Zarya bubble. That is 30% you just got in your gun. And with how much damage it requires to actually kill heroes, on top of that, Sombra can get her ult super quick, but she can also still deal the damage to kill the enemies, so that way she's not getting punished as well. And lastly, the last point I want to make about Sombra here, if you are considering playing her for comp, another reason why I think she is only good if you play her defensive is because even though Sombra has 200 health, which is pretty much the average for health in game for everyone, that's the average, around average health, I want to say. Almost all offensive and half of the defensive have exactly 200 health. Some have 250, some have 150, but for the most part, the all-around average, I want to say, for offensive and defensive is 200 and maybe 250. And Sombra has 200, which puts her in that average range. So if you don't have your teleporter up, you're fucked. Which is why Sombra is much better off if you stick with your team and don't try and get picks with her as often. Because if you try and get those picks, half the time usually, you'll go and try and get it and your teleporter will run out and you haven't realized it, and you can't teleport back and you don't have a teleporter to go to, so you'll just get mowed down by the person you're trying to kill. Because half the time Sombra can't pump out enough damage on some of the bulkier heroes. I mean, Reaper, anyone that has 250 health, she can probably win a fight with. I want to say almost 50% of the time, like 50. It's a fair fight if they both have full health. But it's much better for a Sombra to stick with her team, especially if she has a Zarya on her team, who can constantly give her those bubbles so that way she's not rushing into the danger, trying to hunt down enemies, trying to get those picks, because if she's trying to get those picks, half the time they'll backfire on her, and she'll be the one that gets picked, so now her team has to deal with a 5-on-6 fight, which is usually very bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible to win those fights, but it makes it much more hazardous, to Sombra's health if she can't hold on to those fights because she can't pump out enough damage and she's not there for the fights, which means her ult isn't getting charged, which means she can't be there to hack enemies who are trying to use their ults or trying to use their abilities to help out their team. Like, another great option with Sombra is if you can get behind the enemy line. I know it said you don't do that, but if you can get behind the enemy line with your teleporter up, that's the important part, and hack a Lucio who's in speed boost, that Lucio for the next 5 to 6 seconds can't heal his team. He can only give them the speed boost, which, I mean, is still somewhat important, but without that extra heals from a AoE heal from Lucio, that team is getting horribly punished, which your team could capitalize on, especially if you are queued with more people that you know. But, I mean, this whole entire game, I've been solo queued, and it is working out great. I just have to make sure I get those key hacks, because that is part of Sombra's kit, and you need to make sure you're using it if you are going to try and win. Because Sombra can get those key hacks or get those key picks, because she can still deal the damage, but she's not rushing out by herself, so that way she's still getting the heals from her healers and all of that other stuff. But anyways, I've been your host, GSmith624, and I would love to hear what you guys think about today's episode in the comment section below, and I'll see you then. Farewell.